MagMongoSlade.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries, where we will slowly but surely dissect Elimination Chamber, February 18th, 2023. I'll try not to linger on too many things, but there is a lot to talk about. Now, on the pre-show, Ariel Helwani got lots of love from WWE. There was also some love for Ariel Helwani during the show. I will not be going into that. I recorded an almost 25-minute episode just about wrestling journalism. We'll put that over there. I don't know if it's going to come up before this or after it, but it's going to be there. All right. Deal with that then. I might not even post it till Monday, depending on how everything goes tonight. All right. So let's start the show. Montreal, absolutely ablaze all evening. Even with some really bad finishes and weird booking decisions, Montreal still stayed the course. They just kept saying, hey, we came to have fun. You tried to screw it up, but hey, we came to have fun. Women's Elimination Chamber match won by Asuka, which of course was the right decision. It was a horrible decision to put Natalya into this match. I don't know why she did that. Let's talk about some of the big spots in this match. Carmella was in it at the end, which is already a weird decision. Why have Carmella in at the end? That's a very odd decision. She was a survivor. She never gave up. She was a survivor. She worked harder. And I was disappointed that the final was Asuka versus Carmella, because you can't be more obvious than that. I was already kind of perturbed by them pulling the same crap they pulled at the Royal Rumble by having Asuka come in last. She was the last person to enter the match, and she won it. Like, wow. You know, very creative of you, Triple H. We're going to put the favorite in last, and then just put him over. God, could you at least make him earn it? For Christ's sake. There's some big spots in this match. Nikki Cross jumped from the top of the pod into the crowd, which was, a pretty cool spot. It wasn't too bad. Raquel scooped up Nikki Cross, who probably shouldn't have been in this match, and basically rammed the pod with Nikki Cross. They ended up missing Nikki Cross's elimination because of their excessive amount of camera cuts, but they ended up showing it in the picture-in-picture. Liv Morgan nailed a sunset powerbomb from the top of the pod, I think it was, onto Raquel Rodriguez, but still only managed to get a 2 count. Very odd. Liv Morgan is treated like she's the toughest woman on planet Earth, apparently. She was put in a sharpshooter, which she screamed endlessly for several minutes before Asuka showed up to add another submission hold. And if she still didn't verbally submit, the referee had to stop it because Liv Morgan lost consciousness, which I think might be the first time somebody ever got eliminated from the Elimination Chamber without being pinned or being actually made to submit. So they're going the story of Liv is super tough. That would help if Liv hadn't been submitting up to this point. How many times has Asuka beaten her by submission? Twice this week, right? I think she beat her by submission twice this week. Very weird. Carmella eliminated, I believe it was Natty. Yeah, by super kick. She super kicked her while Asuka was on the sharpshooter. That was interesting, wasn't it? Super kicks and sharpshooters in Montreal. How about it? Anyway, Carmella and Asuka essentially took turns super kicking the crap out of Raquel Rodriguez and then double pinned her with both of their body weight. All right, that was fine. And then Carmella and Asuka have a short finale where Asuka won by essentially the Rings of Saturn. So Asuka is the opponent for Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. I like that idea. I love it, actually. It is tremendous. I just wish Asuka would have had to put in some more effort. I wish there was more drama. I think I would have been more interested if the final competitor would have been either Raquel or Liv. At least that way you would have felt that somebody else could possibly win. When you saw that Carmella was going to be the last person in the match, you just knew Asuka was going over. But again, credit to the fans for sticking with it and being extremely hot for Asuka. And for the match itself, it was a pretty solid match. It wasn't awful. It wasn't super fantastic. I must watch again. Would recommend. It was okay. Maybe on the second watch, it might be better. But watching it for the first time, it was actually not too bad. Second match, Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. Ends in disqualification as Brock Lesnar kicked Bobby Lashley, in his nuts. So this match is a tale of the hierarchy of WWE, if you look at things. Lazy main event guys versus hungry mid-carders. In this match, you had two main event guys and Bobby Lashley who literally didn't do anything except the regular moves that they usually do. F5s and spears. That was pretty much it. It was spears, F5, F5, kick out, spears, F5, kick out. The same Brock Lesnar match as it always is. Which is a little bit lazy. It's kind of like Brock buries his own finish because it's literally the only thing he's willing to do at this point. Bobby finally gets on the Hurt Lock after like 3 spears on Brock. And Brock couldn't break the hold, which he tried to do. And then he just kicked Bobby Lashley in the nuts. People booed the finish after being hot for Brock the entire match. He was the babyface in this thing. People actually wanted to see him. Which was a cop-out. I think we all saw that there was going to be some kind of non-finish in this match. But having Bray Wyatt announce that he wanted to fight the winner kind of threw a monkey wrench into that. Because now everybody's looking for a winner. Because everybody's like, okay, what is Bray doing? And that now it's crickets and, question marks. Because everybody's like, okay, what is Bray Wyatt doing for WrestleMania? Because this match had no winner. In any event, Brock destroyed Lashley after the match. Gave him an F5 through the table. He also attacked the referee for disqualifying him, giving the referee a F5. Then he F5'd the referee onto the wreckage of the table, which Brian Alvarez claims was unplanned. But guess what? Doesn't matter, does it? Does it really matter if it was unplanned? Because I'm pretty sure Brock will do what Brock want to do with whomever he wants to do it with, because who's going to stop him? Generally speaking, the match was kind of flat for me. I hated the disqualification finish, even though I was kind of expecting it. The question, of course, is, was the whole Bray Wyatt thing a red herring from the disqualification finish? Is it a sort of TNA Monsters Ball kind of triple threat match? Is that what they're building towards? Is they're going to say, hey, you're going to have a rubber match and then Bray Wyatt's going to have a deal with another issue? What are they going to do? Was it that Brock was supposed to win, then he finds out Bray was going to be his opponent at WrestleMania, he put the Ixnay on that joint? What happened? We don't know, and we'll probably never know. Was it a change in creative? Is this the plan the whole time? I truly believe that Brock and Bobby were going to end up wrestling at WrestleMania anyway. So I always believed this match would have some kind of chicanery to it. I was disappointed only because the very day before, Bray put up a challenge to fight the winner. That's the only thing that it really kind of upset me. And I'm quite tired of the F5 finisher fest Brock Lesnar match. That's kind of getting frustrating. I'm kind of tired of that. Not saying that Brock needs to go out there and have 30-minute classics, but heavens to Betsy, at least throw some worked punches. At least grab a guy and slam him. At least do something else. For Christ's sake, do some suplexes or something. All right. Moving along. Seth Rollins, the WrestleMania commercial features him as Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, dancing on the stairs. Of course, they were very, very, very careful not to depict the Joker directly. So you'll probably notice that the paint was different. Clearly, that's to avoid copyright infringement. But the general sentiment is there, even though this would probably count as a parody, and parody is fair use. But they still wanted to sort of avoid it. So the vignette features Seth Rollins dancing at the top of the steps, but doing his own dance, not doing the Joker dance. Seth freaking Rollins is like spray painted onto the wall, and he's dancing to the people singing his song. And then he gets to the bottom of the staircase and Becky Lynch appears. And she put on her Christian Bale Batman voice, which is like very, very deep. I thought it was supposed to be like she was supposed to be like some character from the Matrix or something like that. And I'm like, what is Becky Lynch supposed to be doing here? I got once she started putting on the voice, I was trying to think of, all right, is she trying to be futuristic? And then it wasn't until she started talking about the cave. And I was like, oh, she's supposed to be Batman. Because, she's the man. And she started talking about, thanks for the cave. And I'm like, oh, Batman. Batman has a cave. And I was like, oh, so she's Batman and he's the Joker. That falls into all of that weird cosplay stuff that these guys have about the Joker and Batman having sexual relationships and stuff like that. It's very, very creepy. Still, I enjoyed this thing and I thought it was very cool. And glad to see that the vignettes for WrestleMania Goes Hollywood is coming back. Having Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins kind of kick this thing off was okay. My question, of course, before we move on to the next thing is, where the hell are the Hall of Fame inductions? There has not been a single Hall of Fame induction yet on WWE TV. They should have announced people for the Hall of Fame by now. In fact, most of the class should have announced by now. What are they waiting for? I don't know. What are they waiting for? Speaking of Hall of Fame class, Beth Phoenix and Edge versus Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley. Beth Phoenix with her Bull Nakano face paint. I very well enjoyed it, and I think it actually fits her and fits her new persona. Montreal was singing Edge's theme, which rules. I like that. People have been hearing that song for 20 years, and they're just now starting to really sing it because that's becoming a thing for wrestling crowds. Give much credit to Montreal. We're going to talk about Montreal a little bit more later, but much love to Montreal for how good they were this evening and how much they hated Dominic. And the crowd, they started getting quiet. The moment Beth Phoenix got in the ring with Rhea Ripley, the crowd just went flat. It's like, Edge, yay, we love Edge, we love Rhea Ripley, we hate Dominic, hate him. Finn Balor, he's cool with us, but Beth Phoenix, even though Beth Phoenix is Canadian, everybody's kind of like, I don't know. So the match itself was okay. And I think they did more than I expected them to. There was a double educator spot where Finn Balor was in it and Rhea Ripley at the same time, and they were holding each other's arms, which I hate because everybody's in the ring at the same time, and that's not legal. There was a double powerbomb spot where Beth powerbombed Finn while Rhea powerbombed Edge at the same time. I thought that was neat. Even though, I'm not a big fan of the intergender wrestling, it kind of shows off the strength of the women, which is sort of their gimmick, so that's fine. Dominic was heavy into this match, passing brass knuckles to Rhea. Beth Phoenix blew that spot where she was supposed to be there to break up the pin, and Edge had to kick out because she blew the spot. The big finish was actually a surprise. Edge and Beth Phoenix actually win the match with the Shatter Machine, which is FTR's finish. It was very cool. This kind of a callback to when he used their names on WWE TV before. He used their names on SmackDown. For those of you who don't know, Edge and Beth Phoenix, they live in the same town as FTR. So they're probably like neighbors or something like that, or they hang out pretty regularly. So it was a very cool thing for them to use the Shatter Machine. I think it got people thought like, oh, he's using that move because FTR is coming back soon. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I won't want to go that far. I don't know about that. But they certainly used that move with intention. But basically, I saw it as these guys are our friends, and we want to have a tag team finish to this mixed tag match. And so they decided to go with the Shatter Machine. Fine. I liked it. Didn't like Rhea Ripley losing, however, even though she didn't get pinned. I just didn't like her losing. It seemed goofy to me that you go through all the trouble of making her seem like a monster, only for her to not be able to beat 50-year-old Beth Phoenix. Even though she's probably not 50, she's probably like in her mid-40s. I know that Edge needed to win, but I thought he was going to win the feud, and I figured the feud wasn't going to be over. So I'm guessing the feud is over. I don't know. We'll talk about something that I picked up from the press conference in a minute too, near the end of the show. Actually, I did talk about it next. The men's Elimination Chamber match, the United States Championship, was won by Austin Theory, again with the very odd finishes. But first, this match had tons of spots in it, and you can tell this was the reason they put Johnny Gargano in the match. Just early, it was him and Seth Rollins at the beginning, and they're doing all the work rate stuff. You try to stomp me, I'll roll out of the way. You somersault, roll me up, I'll roll you up. All of that stuff that they do on the independents. Johnny Gargano just roped Seth Rollins right back into doing it. You might as well start calling them Tyler Black, because that's exactly what we saw from the beginning of this match. Just tons of work rate stuff. Austin Theory came in third, which is better than what they did with Asuka. For some reason, when it comes to the heels, we can put them in positions where they have to fight to win matches, but baby faces, they should just get handed a win. It's a weird decision. But interesting storyline piece there with Austin Theory in the ring saying to Johnny Gargano, he came in again third with these two guys, they don't care about us. He's talking to Johnny Gargano. They sing for him. They don't care about us. We should work together. What about us? What about the things that we had? Kind of playing on the history between himself and Gargano. Of course, that doesn't work. And instead, Gargano and Rollins take turns beating the tar out of Austin Theory. But, okay. Now let's get into some of the crazy, crazy, crazy spots that took place on this show. But first, before, one more thing. Montez Ford, his gear, tremendous. It was excellent. Bianca Belair tweeted that she was making his gear. She had to Instacart a sewing machine, and she knocked it out of the park. Get you a wife like Bianca Belair. She's hot, and she's actually useful. Which makes her a lot more interesting than most women, because most women are one or the other. Either they're useful but they're not hot, or they're hot but they ain't useful. So she manages to be both at the same time. Get you a girl who can do both. All right. One of the big spots in this match featured Seth Rollins and Johnny Gargano and Bronson Reed. They decided to do a Doomsday Poison Rana, in which Rollins did a clothesline on Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano leaned back and did a Poison Rana on Bronson Reed. I wanted to throw my tablet, for starters, for you bastardizing the Doomsday device the way that you did. Infuriated me. Second, that this guy with these very small legs can move Bronson Reed and flip him over his head. Ridiculous. I also thought Johnny Gargano was going to break his neck. So I had all of these emotions and feelings going on at one time. And instead of looking at a fight, now we're looking at a fight scene. So you have Montez Ford with his very cool gear and his hot wife. He climbed the chamber, positioned himself upside down at the very top of the thing, and plummeted from the sky. Looked amazing. Fell onto everybody. Probably a great safe bump. Tremendous spot. Not enough guys actually climb the chamber. They sometimes climb the pod, but not a lot of them climb the chamber. Then, of course, another very crazy spot. Johnny Gargano is on top of the pod with Seth Rollins. Rollins is about to powerbomb him, but they're up there in that position for seemingly 45 seconds. In which case, Johnny Gargano counters the powerbomb into a Hurricanrana, and Seth Rollins lands into the pile. A very cool spot. Again, it takes forever to set these things up. They look incredibly dangerous, but at the same time, though, I can't be mad if the stuff looks good. What didn't look good, though, Damian Priest's weave, his Korean store weave. I looked at that weave and I just said, man, I don't get it. I don't get why you would do this to yourself. I ain't got nothing to do with it, but I don't understand why he's a grown man with weave. I don't get it. Not a big fan of that weave, dog. Also, he wasn't really involved in too many of the huge spots. He did eliminate Johnny Gargano with the Razor's Edge, but he was kind of understated in this match. which is unfortunate. Damian Priest was then eliminated by a top rope blockbuster by Seth Rollins and Montez Ford. It was tremendous. Montez Ford was stomped on the floor, the padded floor, by the way, and Austin Theory pinned him, which left Austin Theory and Seth Rollins in the final. They did a spot where Montez Ford was kind of out of it, and that he needed help getting out of the ring. The crowd gave him an incredible ovation because they didn't know whether it was real or not. So there's a lot of people who are really into this spot, and he's got to be helped. And he slips at the top of the stairs and kind of collapses. He's being very dramatic, and I love it because you always leave that idea of, is it real? Is he really hurt? What's going on? But of course, you realize it's just a gimmick when Logan Paul jumps into the ring. At this point, the match had kind of frozen, so the momentum had stopped when Montez Ford had to be aided out of the ring. Logan Paul jumps into the ring, buckshot lariat on Seth Rollins, who had to basically run into it. Then he stomped Seth Rollins. The crowd is booing Logan Paul, just booing him tremendously. He closes the door behind him, leaving Seth Rollins in the ring with Austin Theory. Austin Theory hits his finish and steals the win. So Logan Paul is yelling at the camera about how Seth Rollins runs his mouth, and this is what happens when you run your mouth. And I felt this was flat. I felt it was flat. And again, it doesn't really do much of anything for Austin Theory. Austin Theory is a guy who needed to win. He did win, so give him that credit. But he should have won more convincingly. He's beaten this guy before. He's beaten Seth Rollins before. Why can't he beat him straight up now? I get you want to kind of protect Seth Rollins, but maybe you shouldn't have put him in it if this was going to be the case. Not a big fan of what they're doing with Austin Theory. Doesn't really make him look very good. Doesn't make him look very strong. You could have had Logan Paul jump Seth Rollins after the match, and sort of add some heat to it then. Instead of costing him the match, if he was going to cost him the match, he should have cost him the qualifying match or something. But I didn't like this. I thought it was kind of flat, and I think it stole a lot from Austin Theory. And it seems, again, I said it before, that it seemed like Austin Theory and Austin Theory and Liv Morgan are two of the last people Vince really worked on. And Triple H is going to go out of his way to make them look stupid. He didn't do a good job of making Austin Theory look good tonight. Austin Theory claimed he might actually do an open challenge for Monday, which Edge claims that he's going to answer. And that raised my eyebrow because I'm like, Edge is going to answer the open challenge for Austin Theory? Clearly it's going to be a setup for something. It's clearly a setup for something, and I don't think Edge is going to win the United States title. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. And if you were going to do that, and you're going to have Austin Theory beat Edge, certainly he should have just won this match outright. How about that? But it seems like they're finally now going to move towards actually wanting to do something with Austin Theory, I guess. Now, this match was full of hungry guys. I noticed I didn't mention the name Bronson Reed too much because he basically was a big pillow for everybody to land on. He did some stuff. He got lifted by Austin Theory, which I thought was very cool. There was a spot where he basically struggled to lift Bronson Reed, and it reminded me a lot of John Cena trying to struggle to lift the Big Show, where I'm like, kid, give it up. Bronson Reed is too heavy. Stop it. But he just kept going, and he finally got him up. Now, Bronson Reed ended up countering it, but it showed that he was impressive physically, that he was able to actually get Bronson Reed off his feet. But Bronson Reed was a giant pillow throughout the match. He really didn't do too much of anything, and he still isn't really all that over. Montreal was just hot for everybody, so they kind of was responding to essentially everybody, with the exception of, a handful of people. So him being over in Montreal, I wouldn't be too concerned with that. Again, don't hate the idea of Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins. I actually think it's not too bad. From a work rate perspective, it's going to be pretty good. Just think this was the wrong avenue to go about it. Whenever somebody interferes in the Elimination Chamber or the Hell in a Cell match, I feel like you just damaged that stipulation. Even though they did a clever way of him getting in there, he got in there because the door was open. It just didn't sit right with me. It just didn't sit right with me. I didn't like the finish. I felt like Seth Rollins should have done the JOB and gave the kid a clean win. That's just me, though. Main event time. Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship. I'm not going through the whole Universal Undisputed It's the WWE title, all right? Goddamn. Loud, vociferous FU Roman chants, which seem to go on endlessly forever. Just go on and on and on. They both were introduced. Sami Zayn got a hero's welcome, of course. It took them 5 minutes to make contact. The crowd just seemed to go on and on with not a sign of tiring in sight. They just really went on. I like it. They soaked it up. They let the crowd, feel how they were feeling, and they were trying to say, hey, just let the crowd tire themselves out so now we can start working the match. They had to work the match eventually, so they gave the crowd, I think, 5 minutes to get out how they feel before they really started the match. There was a mixture of, they didn't start out with straight babyface shine here. They did a sort of a mixture of the two, but they did have an interesting bit where Roman got thrown over the top rope, and then that led to the helo, which Roman sold like he got shot in the ear, and Sami Zayn was able to soak up some of that. So they told the story. They worked kind of slow. They worked pretty slow because the crowd was incredibly hot, but they wanted to make sure that the crowd was following along. So Roman is talking to Sami's wife, who he kissed before the match. And, Roman is like, I wanted you to be a part of my family. I wanted to provide for you. Then he, drags Sami over there. While he's on top, he's dragging Sami over there and saying this is Sami's fault, and he's muffing Sami and beating him up. And I wanted this. I wanted the unity. And she's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Sami, come on. And it was great, emotion there, So I really enjoyed that part. Things started going out of hand at one point where there's literally like 3 or 4 ref bumps. There's a bunch of run-ins. I'm like, at this part, I'm not really a big fan of the match anymore. All right. At the part where we get a ref bump, Jimmy interferes. He's beating up on Sami Zayn. As soon as Jimmy leaves the ring, another ref comes out. It's like, didn't that ref see Jimmy in the ring beating up on Sami? He would have had to see him. If he was en route, he would have had to see this. So now I'm starting to lose a little bit of attachment to this. I'm like, all right, so the theater is about to start. At this point, Jimmy is trying to cost Sami the match. He fails. Sami Zayn kicks out of a spear. There's another ref bump, and now Roman and all these guys are going to get chairs, and they're about to beat the tar out of Sami Zayn with this chair. Roman gives the chair to Jay, who pops up, and Roman is jaw-jacking with Jay. He gives Jay the chair. They tell a great story with Roman turning his back on Jay. They're trying to tell us that, when Roman trusts somebody, he trusts them completely. He trusts them enough to turn his back on them. But he's also sort of testing them, daring them in a way. So he turns his back on Jay, and Jay grabs the chair, but he won't hit Sami with it. So Roman turns around and is like, what's your problem? And then he's like, you're going to defy me for him? You're going to defy me for him? And he just starts shoving Jay in the face and pushing him and everything. But Jay's not going to do anything. Roman knocks the chair out of Jay's hand, and he picks it up himself. Sami Zayn runs across the ring, tries to do a haluva kick on Roman. Roman ducks. He ends up kicking Jay. So now we're telling that story. Jay's down. And Roman gets sort of a visual pin on Sami before actually getting the real pin on Sami. So Roman Reigns wins the match, which, of course, is no surprise. They didn't let this linger, however, because immediately, Jimmy jumped in the ring to continue pounding on Sami Zayn. This led for Kevin Owens to come out to make the big return, and he beat up everybody hilariously. Paul Heyman tries to attack Kevin Owens, and he's punching him in the back. Just real feckless, terrible punches. It was excellent. Paul knows that, he's not a tough guy. He's not a fighter, so he doesn't need to look like one. So he's doing the worst possible punches. It's like, it's like Kevin Owens is being attacked by, a 5-year-old or something like that. So Paul ends up taking a bump, which was terrible with the stunner. Interesting stuff here. At this point, Roman's up, Sammy's up. Kevin Owens has done his business with Roman. He steps aside to let Sammy get one more helluva kick in. And then Sami Zayn is distraught, even though the crowd is still cheering him and still behind him. And Kevin Owens walks out. He doesn't embrace Sami Zayn. He doesn't seem to be on the side of Sami Zayn at all. He came to help him, but he walked out. And there was no brotherhood or embrace between the two. And Jey Uso never came back. So they're telling the story here that maybe Kevin Owens is upset with Sami Zayn for how long it took for him to do something, maybe, which is what I'm going to guess here. I'm going to guess Kevin Owens is upset because it took Sami Zayn so long to come to his senses. And that, or maybe Sami Zayn hasn't checked on him, has been, self-serving or whatever. Or, Kevin Owens is upset about the relationship between Jey and Sami, something I didn't consider. I don't think many of us did consider how Kevin Owens might feel about Sami Zayn still being friends with a member of the Usos. So that's one of the things that you can go with here. I think it was a pretty good match. They let the crowd do most of it, most of the work. They hit their big spots. Roman got caught a Blue Thunder Bomb, but there was a lot of kicking out of finishers, which I'm not a huge fan of. But to me, it was not nearly as bad as Clash at the Castle. Clash at the Castle was, that time for Drew McIntyre. And when he lost, which I think most people were surprised that he lost, they decided to do the singing segment at the end and try to send people home happy. Here, they did the Kevin Owens return, but they showed discipline by not giving people too much in the way of Sami Zayn. They didn't want to take away from Sami Zayn, so Kevin Owens came and did his thing, but then he quickly exited. They didn't want Jey Uso to take too much from Sami, so he came in, did his part, and then quickly exited. Roman took some bumps, which, he had to do in order to make Sami look strong, and so did Jimmy. But the question was, of course, where the hell was Solo? Sami never needed to win the championship. I see a lot of responses from this. And obviously, a lot of normies wanted the moment. I get that. But like I said during my review of SmackDown, Sami's story is and was always about him regaining respect. Him being a heel and being a bit of a goofy heel at the time with losing the Ricochet and all this stuff with Johnny Knoxville, him being embarrassed week after week, people thinking that he was delusional when he was talking about the conspiracy theory, all that stuff. That is the core of Sami Zayn's character going back 3 years. It goes back to, I think, even before the pandemic. He needed something to get people to take him seriously again, for people to believe in him. This was a long stretch. And then he turned babyface right at the right time. And people started to respect Sami Zayn again. He stood up to Roman Reigns. He was the guy who finally had enough of the abuse of the bloodline, enough of the manipulations. He wasn't as bad as they were. For a long time, he was delusional into thinking that, he was really a member of the family. But of course, there's also the question of, was he really a member of the family? Was he really accepted? Or is this one of Roman's psyops? Which is, one of the stories that they told through the match, is Roman yelling to Sami's wife that he wanted to provide for her. He wanted to bring her into the family and all this kind of stuff, which is probably a Roman psyop. But honestly, it's part of the story. You know, Roman beating Sammy doesn't prevent Sammy from regaining his respect, which is something that he really wanted to do. And the ultimate goal of the character was to rebuild Sami Zayn, which is what they did. They did a really good job of rebuilding Sami Zayn and putting Sami Zayn in a position where now he's a serious threat. Now he was a credible threat to Roman Reigns, where if you'd have done it 2 or 3 years ago, and I think they actually did have a Roman Reigns Sami Zayn match at some point before he really became a member of the Bloodline, and he got squashed in like 4 minutes or something like that. It was pretty short. It was on SmackDown, if I remember correctly. So they went from that, you know, same character, same physique, t-shirt, funny looking, same thing, to what they got in Montreal on the 17th, or the 18th rather, which is, you know, this guy, he's got the potential. He could be the guy. That's regaining the respect for the character. The story doesn't necessarily mean that Sami Zayn has to win. And I know that a lot of people feel that way. They feel deflated or defeated or whatever, but that was not the story. There's also Sami Zayn's story with the Usos. You know, particularly during his early days of the Bloodline, him trying to win over Jey Uso. You know, he was already, he became pretty friendly with Jimmy. He makes Jimmy laugh. Even goes back to the story of, Jimmy sitting down with Roman saying, hey, you know, Sammy Uso, I like him. I like him a lot. I love that scene, you know, because Jimmy's sitting there grinning and smiling, and he's trying to sell Roman somewhat on Sammy. But he says, you know, hey, my family is my family. While Jey has a different perspective. Jey never liked Sammy. Sammy won him over. So it makes sense that he's slower to flip, because Jey doesn't really like Roman either. And that's, you know, the stories that interchange and connect here. And so now what they've done is they also added Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens has a different relationship with the Usos and with Sammy and with Roman. And his relationship with Sammy is a little bit frayed. You know, as we talked about before, he's always been sort of the reality, the base for Sami Zayn. You know, going back a couple of years with him telling that there's no conspiracy against him. And Sammy got mad at him for saying, you know, what do you mean there's no conspiracy against me? You know, and now he was the one who was telling them, you're not a real member of the Bloodline. They're going to turn on you. You know, it didn't quite happen the way Kevin Owens said it would, but the Bloodline pushed and pushed and pushed to the point, you know, past the point where Sami Zayn could take it. But he also stood by and allowed them to beat the tar out of Kevin Owens for a long time without doing anything. So that's something that you would be upset about if you were Kevin Owens. It's like, yo, at the Royal Rumble, you know, you just kind of stood idly by and let these guys beat the tar out of me. We're not exactly on good terms after that. You know, like I think he was handcuffed to the top rope or something like that, and they were kicking him in the face, and Sammy just stood right there and was kind of like, come on, guys. That's enough, guys. You know, no more. And then he finally took action, but he didn't like jump in and protect Kevin Owens. So I saw a critique that Kevin Owens should have come out earlier to help Sami Zayn and to protect Sami Zayn. When Jimmy interfered, Kevin Owens should have been there, and this is bad storytelling. If you pay attention, Sami did not help Kevin. You know, he didn't help Kevin until it was already too late and they was already going too far. So Kevin Owens did the exact same thing. Once Sami had already lost and he was being beaten up beyond recognition, then Kevin Owens came out there as to say, I am as good a friend to you as you were to me. And then afterwards, Kevin walked off. He turned around. He looked at Sami Zayn, who was looking at him. He didn't offer him any sort of comfort at all. He turned around and left. So the story that they're telling isn't just a story of Sammy and Jey Uso, which of course is going to be the story going forward, but also the story of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn rekindling their friendship. So it was very, very well done. It took a lot of time to get there. And maybe we should have not had so many ref bumps, and maybe we could have done some of this stuff post match rather than in the middle of the damn match before the pinfall. But I think that the storyline, if you're paying attention to the characters and to the interests of the characters and the agendas of the characters, was actually excellent. So they did a very good job at the end, and it was bittersweet, I guess you could say. But ultimately, this was the direction that they needed to go in. I know that the wrestling media was kind of like, oh, it was the time. We should have did this. We should have did that. It's like, if the wrestling media had their way, then you wouldn't have this moment, because Roman would have lost the title to Drew McIntyre back in whatever month that was at Clash at the Castle. So the idea, they don't even think about that though. Like, Clash at the Castle was similar. You had London. You hadn't had a show there in a long time. It was big. Everybody thought that, Drew was going to be the guy. Even I thought Drew was going to be the guy because I wasn't sure when, Cody was coming back. And I was like, hey, you got to do it now or Drew McIntyre is dead. Either Drew wins the title now or Drew is dead. And they chose not to go that route. But the entire wrestling media was kind of like, huh? I thought that Drew was going to win. I'm like, yeah, I think we all did. But he didn't. So a big deal. I think at this point, we are in a really weird position because everybody wants Roman to lose, and they wanted Roman to lose, and they've done a good job of actually booking solid opponents, and his opponents are over, and his opponents are in their hometowns, and it's the hottest crowd in the world or whatever, but it's not the right time. It's not the right story. Is it going to be as hot at WrestleMania for Cody? Probably not. And I will say that. I don't think that Cody is going to be as over in California as Drew was in Europe or as Sammy was in Canada. It probably would have been better moments to do it in Europe or to do it in Canada, but it's not about a one fleeting moment in time. Even if they would have said, hey, do something silly where Sammy wins it and then he loses it the next Monday on Raw, it's kind of like, well, come on. You can't exactly do that, can you? It just doesn't make sense. We have to follow basic storyline structure here. And so I'll give Triple H some credit for being disciplined, not bucking under the pressure of everybody wanting him to change WrestleMania because of Sami Zayn. So I will give him credit for that. But ultimately, the match felt longer than it really was, mainly because of how much time Roman took to drag everything out, to make everything matter, to build pace and tempo over a short amount of time. It wasn't just 100% action. It was a lot of theatrics. But I think the match fell apart with all the gaga. With all the ref bumps and all of that kind of stuff, I don't feel like we needed that. I feel like we could have done so much of this stuff could have been done either behind the ref's back, outside the ring, or you could have done it post-match, Now, to critique a little bit the attack on Jay, it might have been smarter to have Jay hit Sammy by accident rather than having Sammy hit Jay by accident. But now that I realize that the story is going to be probably about Kevin Owens and his relationship to Sami Zayn and Sami Zayn's relationship to the Usos, and perhaps Sami, and Kevin not being on the best of terms because Sami is cool with the Usos, it makes sense. So now it's going to be, how can Roman and Jimmy manipulate Jay into rejoining the Usos to fight Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens? And how are Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn going to reconcile and deal with their feelings about each other? I know we're talking about feelings a lot on the wrestling show, which is very odd, but it's a legitimate discussion to have, So it was a very solid theatrical ending to a match. I just felt like it was a little too much gaga for me. That's it. It's a little too much, too many ref bumps, a lot of finishers being kicked out of, Probably too much of that all night. But overall, I think it was a very good show, and the crowd was absolutely demented, and I thoroughly loved the show. Props to Montreal, who was absolutely a blast this entire night. WWE actually gave them many reasons to crap on this show, with the disqualification in the Brock Lesnar Bobby Lashley match, the run-in in the men's Elimination Chamber match, all the gaga in the Reigns and Zayn match. Under normal circumstances, people would have pissed all over this show. And I think a lot of people came out of the show deflated because Sami not only did not win, I think mostly that's it, that Sami didn't win, but you also had a couple of screwy finishes that, that made people unhappy. But there is something to be said about delayed gratification. And I know that people are going to say, well, Cody winning is not going to be the same. But again, like I said just a few seconds ago, if it was all about the moment, then Drew would have won the title in London. And we wouldn't have this moment now. We would have had that moment in London, and then we'd be talking about something completely different right now. Because either A, Roman wouldn't be the champion anymore, or B, his reign would not be unbroken. Part of the reason why it's so big right now that Sami Zayn could have been the guy is because it's been 900 days for Roman. If it wasn't 900 days, but instead 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, I don't think people would be this excited about it, or would have been that excited about it. But props to Montreal. They have a great history of wrestling. It's always an excellent crowd for Montreal. They should go there more often, So they get top marks. I think WWE's booking didn't do them any favors, but Montreal bailed them out. They had a really hot crowd tonight. So what say you guys? What are you thinking about Elimination Chamber? I'll talk to you guys later. Do all the YouTube things. Peace out. Peace.